Hello, everybody. This is a male space, and we have today another episode of the Mansplainers. And I'm joined by my co-host, Dr. Stephen Baskerville. Stephen, who do we have with us today, and what are we going to talk about?
Well, the original plan was we were going to have Tom Golden, who is a well-known figure in fathers, men's issues. I think he hardly needs any introduction. And we were going to have Tom, he's by profession, I believe, a psychologist, a therapist. And we were going to have him talk about some of the peculiarities of the Psychotherapy Institute as far as it relates to men, on which he writes very well and talks very well. But because of the development in the last few days, really, of Tucker Carlson's quite extraordinary video, we thought this was enough of a, we all agreed that this was enough of a news event, a spanner in the works, so to speak, that it merits some urgent attention. And I say extraordinary, not necessarily for the best. And then he followed it up with an equally extraordinary interview with the producer of that of the original film. And it was so full of misleading and misinformation that we thought, and Tom was, our schedule with Tom was coming up, so we decided nobody could help us better with that discussion than Tom Golden. Tom has written a Substack piece on Tucker Carlson's video. We will put a link to that on the video, so be sure and read it. It's excellent. And then we also decided to get an international perspective, so we invited Vincent McGovern. Vincent McGovern is a very well known personality on fathers and men's issues in the UK and in Ireland. And we are very pleased to have him agree to come on with very little notice. But I thought this would be interesting to have this international perspective. He's appeared on many national and international. He's also the head of, or was the head of Families Need Fathers, which is the main fathers shared parenting group in Britain. So we're very happy, and we will put a link, Vincent, to your work as well. Before we finish, both of you should make sure, give us a verbal understanding of where we, where people can reach you for more work. So I don't know. There's a lot of questions we could start with. Tom, maybe we should start with your some of the points you made on the video. On your Substack. I thought you were very charitable. You gave
Yes.
you started out and you pointed out that Tucker Carlson does stress the importance of fathers and fatherhoods, and he does. I have strong reason to believe that the issue is genuinely important to him, that he really cares about it. He sneaks little asides in on fatherhood and
Mm.
family issues onto his other commentaries. He talks about his own family a lot. I'm sure he's sincere about it, but he never goes into it. He never investigates it. He never does anything of any depth until he did this. This is the first piece I've seen where he devotes the entire thing to fatherhood. And frankly, I think we all agree it's a disaster. It confirms actually my worst fears because he's done some discussions with a few interviewees recently, Matt Walsh and a few others, where he showed that he really didn't quite get it. And I think this video confirms it. So I don't know. Do you want to start out by being charitable, or do you want to? I mean, by
Well,
the end of your commentary, I thought what you said what needed to be said. The
well,
truth
thank
about
you. And I enjoyed yours too, Stephen. It was a different way of saying the same thing, really. We were
yeah,
both on the same wavelength. But
excellent.
my initial reaction was, wait a minute, because look at the start of this thing. At the very start, what do they say? And boys are choosing porn, video games, and what was it? Something weed over family. So they're starting the whole thing. To me, it was like propaganda. It's like propaganda. They're starting the whole thing saying this is a choice that boys are making. This is something that they're choosing to do. So it gives it a moral frame. This moral frame, there's something wrong with their choices, which was just a horrible start. And it frames the whole rest of of the documentary in terms of framing men and boys in a moral frame rather than a factual frame. So that was kind of my starting point with them. What do you guys think?
I thought, Tom, if I could just add, I think he made a very succinct statement because they don't really, he never really, well, he does a little bit, but in this genre of conservative treatment of fathers, they seldom say horrible things directly about men, but the
Right,
implication is there. And you said it very well, I thought. You said it's all reduces the whole fatherhood crisis is reduced to male behavior,
right, right.
to male behavior.
Yes. And
You don't
that's
have
what
to.
sells. That's what sells. Male behavior. If you can blame it on men, things are going to sell. And people will love it. They'll lap it up because we're living in a gynocentric culture. A culture that sees men as needing to change, men as being a part of the problem, men as being the ones that need to change their ways. And women are just, well, they're victimized by these men, you know? And so that's kind of the frame of the whole thing. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
Now, the other thing that a lot of younger viewers may not realize is that this is very much a throwback to a type of genre that was developing in the late 90s, mid to late
Yes.
90s, and into the early 2000s of calling attention to fatherhood. It started with Al Gore in the White House. Fatherhood, they created all these organizations, National Fatherhood Institute, um, and state governments imitated it. And it was the same kind of thing, very similar. In those days, the implication was the crisis is caused by fathers abandoning their children.
Right.
This was the thing. And this nowadays, everyone knows this is nonsense. People know about the divorce courts. It's reached
Yep.
general awareness. And so they've changed it. And now they're scolding men and nagging men for not getting married, for not manning up, for not having children, for not, putting their head in the noose, putting their head in the
Yep.
lion's mouth. And but this has been going on among the traditional
Uh,
conservatives for what? No, 30 years, 30 years
at
that I know
least
of.
you
Yeah,
and
to
I
the
both
mid,
remember the whole thing was deadbeat dads.
yeah,
And they put them on milk cartons. It's like, oh my God,
it was
blame it on
all
the
over.
men.
Exactly, it was all over in the 90s, especially. It goes back to Bill Clinton's so-called welfare reform, which I won't go
Right,
into, but it was a
right.
hoax.
Yep.
But I don't know, Vincent. I don't know if you're how long you've been at this game, but there was actually an offshoot. I said it was imitated by U.S. state governments. It was also imitated in Canada and in Britain. There was a group called Fathers Direct. I think they're now called the Fatherhood Institute. Adrienne Burgess was in charge of this, an actress, and as far as I could tell, it was the same playbook. It was the same formula, but I don't know how widespread it was or whether it had any impact or what, or whether anybody took it seriously in the UK or not.
Well, Stephen, I'm in this business since 2007 when I got a very sudden introduction to the beauty of the divorce courts, particularly which in my case, the judges protected me and the children quite well. It's the local agencies that are what I call now female Taliban. I've gone past calling them gender vigilantes because that's too mild. And they're unregulated, unaccountable, but they control the entry to the family courts in working class areas.
Hmm.
And what you talked about there, I was asked about this in GB News a year ago. And even though I wanted to cover the subject, it's exactly as Thomas just said. I have huge knowledge in this business based on five ombudsmans, freedom of parliamentary, and so on. And yet, all even a conservative program want to talk about was adolescence and how has this male image come about. Nobody wants to address the what I call almost illegality of the secret services operating in the basement of the family court arena, which are
Hmm.
then used by the rest of the court system. And they're like paramilitaries in a non-functioning society, you see. They do the dirty work. In the local one in Brent, in North London, North West London, where I live and was processed, they will only assist female survivors of domestic abuse. The man is automatically the perpetrator. Even if you're the primary carer for nine
Right,
years, as I was, you're
right.
denied service because of your gender. Then the court social workers describe this unregulated gender vigilante body as being professionals. You are processed through the MARIC process by social workers, multi-agency risk assessment conference, which gives it a veneer of legal bias, with police present and all the rest. It's a police liaison officer. But the verdict on the evidence, they received the evidence on the man's violence, allegedly, in a separate process with Women's Aid. And if it's not good enough to get an injunction, they will assist you in getting the injunction. In my case, they come up with a family dog, a phantom dog we never had that I allegedly kicked and killed in front of the mother. So that got me kicked out of the family home through the marriage process because everybody knows that people who abuse animals like that in front of other humans are on a power crazed mission. So that's how I got kicked out of the family home. And I'd never had a mobile phone or a computer. I mean, I was a Luddite. All I knew about divorce was how to spell it as bad news. None of my friends had been divorced. But I had enough instinct to not overreact, to realize it's a brutal process. And I don't know whether it's because I'm an Irishman, grew up in a mad area, whatever, or because I'm not an intellectual. I left school at 17, and I'm unburdened by intellect. But I have a very good understanding of injustice and a good understanding of history. So exactly what you talked about there, Stephen. I would argue that the UK is further ahead than America, but it is quieter and more subtle under the scenes, behind the scenes.
Hmm.
The narrative in the UK is completely anti-male, other than to depict them as being. I mean, for example, the Mayor of London, I blogged about this. The Mayor of London is on about that children, boys as young as 4, need to be educated about how toxic their masculinity is so that they will not abuse children and will not abuse girls. I stopped a slush fund in Brent, giving 20,000 to a charity called Tender. I could tell you the origin of that very nicely, which is going to go in £1,000 a time, go into secondary schools to teach girls how to recognize that they're going to become, not likely, that they're going to become victims of domestic abuse and stop the signs, and to teach boys that they've inherited violence within them because of their gender, and that they must learn to recognize this and how to address this and be better husbands to children and better fathers. So to me, it's a gigantic Ponzi scheme. But what sickens me is, apart from a few people present and a few women otherwise, there's virtually nobody prepared to take it on. There's nobody prepared to acknowledge it. The few politicians who come in and genuinely do try to do something, I have found, certainly find themselves subject to allegations from the past of sexual abuse behaviour. 3 or 4 of them I've known and I've worked with. And that gets rid of an awful lot of them then, you see. Nobody's prepared to put their head above the parapet. Because they realise that quite simply, Tim Loughton, for example, Children's Minister under the first Conservative, when it came in 2010, the Conservative government is really going to reform the family courts. 2 months after they got in, they completely turned against deadbeat dads. On Father's Day, David Cameron, the Prime Minister, went against deadbeat dads. Well, I was organised a boat trip on the Thames for children of families with fathers members. And I looked up and saw the House of Commons, and I knew then that it was a complete dud. So fathers are now just a convenient target. And in many regards in England, I see dads now as having replaced, to borrow the Jim Crow expression from the southern states of North America, you're guilty by gender. And after that, it's just a question of process. That is the training. That is the methodology. That is the narrative in the media, massively, including deliberately falsehoods. So how to address
Right.
that is where we are. Well, thank you.
I want to talk about that a little bit because I think the significance of Carlson's video is very much, he's a conservative. He's a self-styled conservative. He's not a standard conservative. He's not a neocon. He's not he sees himself as not part of the establishment. He attacks establishment conservatives. He doesn't just, criticize them. He attacks them and ridicules them quite strongly. So I wanted to talk about that. Tom, I want to ask you about that. I think we, can focus for a few minutes on the failure. Why do conservatives seem to, we blame feminists. We know about the feminists created the welfare system. They created the divorce courts. They created the no-fault divorce. They created this whole filthy, rotten machine. But why do the conservatives play along with this when they could be, the Republican Party is in a terrible crisis right now. It's divided by Trumpism and people like Carlson and his opponents. And I know the conservatives, the Tory party in Britain is in free fall. I mean, they're completely falling apart. Some people say they won't exist anymore, and they're being challenged by Nigel Farage. But Nigel Farage doesn't deal with these issues either. So, Tom, could I ask you why are the conservatives of all people what could they be gaining if they did do this, and why don't they?
Well, my impression of politicians these days is that they are afraid of women and afraid of feminists. They're afraid to make any move that would look like they were misogynists. And this is all how gynocentrism, this idea that women should be first in a number of things, how that has been weaponized by feminists. They've weaponized it to the point where everyone's afraid. Men are afraid in relationships to challenge a woman. And politicians are afraid. And judges are afraid to be able to say, no, this dad deserves this and that, for fear that the feminists will come and yank him. You know? It's like the whole culture now is based on fear rather than based on fairness. That's my take on
Abs
it.
Absolutely. There's a great irony in one of Tucker Carlson's earlier, a few months ago. He was interviewing someone like Matt Walsh, or there were two or three, four other interviews, and he was scolding men for not getting married. You know, the man up thing. He's following all these uh, Josh Hawley and all the others,
Yeah.
Tories who are conservatives who are saying this. And he was scolding men, and he said, "Yeah, Corey, you can be taken through the divorce courts. Your children can be taken from you. You can everything, you can lose everything. You can become homeless. You can, you can become a criminal and incarcerated without trial. But life is full of risks. So man up, and what you say to all that." And this is, I think, exactly what he said, word for word. He said, "I'm a man. I'm not afraid." And yet the irony of this was that he was afraid. That's exactly what he was. He was
Yes.
afraid. He wasn't
Yes.
afraid. He was afraid. He was afraid of the women, and like you
Yes.
say, he was
Yes.
afraid of the feminists. He was afraid of the women. I think he was afraid of the conservative Republican women, who are
Yes.
just as bad in many
Yes.
ways as the feminists
Yes.
are. And he had fear written all over his words were just
Fearful.
doublespeak, just
Yep.
gobbledygook, because
Yep.
he clearly was terrified.
Yep.
Yeah. Um, Vincent, let me ask you the same question. Why don't the Tories rise to the occasion on this? It seems like they would have nothing to lose and everything to gain. And a figure like Nigel Farage, or for that matter, his counterpart in America, Donald Trump, why don't these dissident right wingers use this as a bludgeon against the Tories, against the Republicans, to show their hypocrisy and their effeminacy, frankly, and their cowardice.
Mm. Mm.
Um,
The Brexit Party, which became Reform, which before that was UKIP. UKIP, when there's a woman deputy leader, had 50-50 shared parenting, starting position post-divorce separation, Suzanne Evans. You see, this massive problems that we are talking about totally disproportionately affects the poorer areas, the working class men, because you're not allowed legal aid and all the rest as a man, because you're automatically deemed a perpetrator. The woman claims legal aid, so she gets legal aid, but all she do is say she feels afraid of you, and there's a horde of them queuing up to represent her in the court and demonize you. So you see, it's only the working class men that are really affected by this, right? And they are not where the conservatives have the politicians, because most conservative parties, they're the parties of people who are in business, of the middle class and upwards. There's not as much dirt done on them. The agencies, the dirty agencies, are not involved there. They can afford legal representation from the beginning. So they're far better protection. But in the working class areas and labour areas in the UK, and Labour is women's aid has taken over Labour effectively. Labour is totally anti-male. It is boastful of that.
Mm.
All of them say that men must change. Men must change. How can men change? Make things better for women.
Right.
So men are being abandoned by the Tories. Nigel Farage, too, he's afraid. Now, I'm standing as a local candidate in Brent. Don't laugh. And I'm standing as a candidate for reform on shared parenting based on my 5 homicides investigations and all the rest. I know I'm only going to get a token response. I'm going around every evening on my motorbike with a megaphone in the area I'm looking at, 10 mile an hour. I decided to do it differently than everybody else does it.
Huh.
But I am going to get nowhere. But what I'm aiming for is to get enough votes that Reform will consider, because I'm quite friendly with Anne Widdecombe. He did a brilliant interview and a foreword for
oh,
my
yeah.
book a couple of years ago. And I want to get onto the family policy panel of reform and demonstrate them. And it's in their interest to take an interest in this. But they're poisoned by the fact that the Tories, prior to 2010, were very good on this as an issue. And the moment it got in, within 2 months, David Cameron completely switched. Because politicians only last for a few years in Parliament if they get there. And they know where the power lies. The power lies with the public sector and the feminist vote and the feminist lobby.
Yep.
And they haven't the guts to challenge that.
Yep.
And that is the bottom line. You see, it only affects disproportionately the poor areas is mostly affected. That's working class men. Half of them are from abroad in the UK, in London, don't speak English as a first language. They're easy disposed of. There's no votes in them.
But
They're
does
not being considered.
anybody, I'm sorry,
Sorry.
I just want to ask, does anybody in the UK really believe that Labour is still a party of the working class? I mean, it's like the Democrats in America, Tom. I could ask you
Well, you
that.
see,
Does anyone believe that
the,
the Democrats are the party of the common man anymore? I mean,
if,
there are all
if,
these. Yeah, go on,
if
please.
I can just address that very particular point, Labour is almost totally the party of the working class kids who got university degrees and who despise the working class habits and the men.
Mm.
And they have more hatred of the working class than anybody I've known. As a motor courier for 13 years, I know well how that goes. The Tories at least represent business. They know they need the working men. So there's nobody representing the working man. Farage says he does, but he will not touch this subject because it's such a loss leader for politicians, because there's no counterbalance. Men will not get united and vote and form in mass.
Right.
I didn't realize that Reform had that in their manifesto. They do have the shared parenting
They,
is
they
part of the
did when
manifesto.
they were UK, 2015.
Oh, I see.
They
Not
did
anymore.
under a woman. A woman brought it in, Suzanne Evans. Yeah, but
Hmm.
they've dropped it since. Oh, I wish it was in the manifesto now, I assure you. But it's not discussed. It is. I have met Lee Anderson, Richard Tice in person, getting copies of my book. The promise, of course, take a great concern. Yeah, yeah. And I'm going to grow hair.
Now, Richard Tice is the deputy of the Reform Party in the
Yeah,
UK.
correct, correct.
Just so
Yeah,
for people who don't know. No, it's quite amazing. I don't know, but because people do say that Reform is now the party of the working class, and Donald Trump is supposedly the
yeah.
politician of the working class.
They
Uh,
won't touch divorce,
but they won't
kids.
touch divorce. Donald Trump has not even start any policy on anything on social policy, welfare. I mean, the Republicans. Let me just give people a little background. You touched upon the way this affects working class men, especially, and this is true in the United States also because it started in America with the welfare system, which,
Yes,
is unlike the European welfare system. The American one is primarily a safety net for low income people, not a middle
mm,
class insurance policy. So
yeah,
in both countries, then it sounds like the divorce machinery really started under with and they know this. They know the feminists know that if they bring these things in for the working class, for the poor, the low income people, it's easy to do. Low income people don't have the means, the leisure, the education often to fight
yeah,
back, to defend their
Right.
rights.
Right.
If they introduced it in the middle class people have more affluence, more time, more education uh,
yeah,
to uh, to defend their rights. So they start with the poor, the low income people, the working class, and then they spread it out
Mhm.
to the middle class,
Yep.
and they pull in the middle class dads as well. And it's very odd that the Republicans in America have, again, I remember this up until the 90s, up until the Clinton welfare reform. Welfare reform was the top priority of the Republicans. It was one of the main things they were pushing for. And they just dropped it in the 90s. Clinton pretended to reform it, which he didn't do. And the feminists took it over and they changed welfare from something that was a necessary evil into a positive good because it empowered women. And from that
yeah.
point on, the Republicans were terrified and wouldn't touch it any longer. So
Right.
the whole field of social policy, family policy, you name it. Nowadays, it leads to the divorce and welfare machinery, and they just don't want to touch that.
Yeah.
Well, what you have is what you had in Russia in the 1920s. where daddy state is the father of so many kids who are handy to go sent to war and all the rest of that is necessary.
Hmm.
You know, they have a whole generation of kids who grown up without having a father or that discipline or understanding of work or what have you. And they're the huge amount of the undergrowth of crime, shall we say, because they got no option. But there's a lot of people, a lot of citizens making a lot of money out of that criminal among the working class. It feeds a lot, it gives a lot of wages, a lot of pensions are dependent upon it. So you see, you got this a group of lower middle class people working in the huge public sector, working in the social services, working in the prison institutes and all the rest. They would be out of work if there wasn't a large amount of young male prisoners coming through, which is the highest in Europe, UK has, mostly of that type, that background. So there's much vested interest to be got from the current system. While they lament it, they benefit from it.
I'd like to talk a little bit about the media here and the news blackout on these issues, because Tucker Carlson is, after all, a journalist. He's a journalist, which he sees himself, I think rightly, as something of a renegade journalist. He's been he was fired from Fox News. He had some rupture with PBS years ago. On top of that, so he doesn't follow the Republican neocon party line. He criticizes Republicans. He criticizes conservatives. He doesn't, and he I think it's fair to say he shows a certain amount of courage in doing so. He shows Roger Devlin, who we interviewed on this show a few months ago, made a very succinct comment on my commentary. He said it's strange that a man who doesn't hesitate to stand up to the Israel lobby and to other, establishment right wing groups falls, becomes a simpering sissy and is terrified when confronted by the feminists and by
Right.
women.
Right.
And I think that was exactly right. He makes some very good, very incisive, I think, in my opinion, videos on other issues. I think he's spot on when it comes to Ukraine. Whether you agree with his view on Gaza and the Iran war and the Israel, he does show a certain amount of, shall we say, testicles in taking it on. But this is it seems like it's an entirely different order of magnitude when it comes to news blackouts, when it comes to cowing men and especially politicians, public figures, academics, and journalists, the journalists that we count on to keep the government accountable and to inform us of the government chicanery. Why does he? Anybody have any thoughts about that? Why he? Um, we don't hire journalists to scold us, and this is very strange. I said this about Josh Hawley, who's an American senator. We don't elect U.S. senators to scold us. We don't listen to journalists to hear them nag us and scold us about our own imperfections. Listen to them to keep the government honest, and that's precisely what Carlson is not doing here. He's
Correct.
taking the government line.
Yep.
Right, but
On
I
the
think that
subject of journalists,
Sorry?
sorry. Yeah, on the subject of journalists and writers, look what happened to Neil Linden, that brilliant man who wrote No More Sex War back in the 70s,
Oh yeah, I
who was
remember
an
him.
extraordinary amount of income per day. He was then on £1,000 a day in the late 70s. He wrote that book, he was blacklisted. I've been on various groups with former journalists, or former solicitors and the like, who've spoken out about this in their own chambers, in their own field. John Waters of Ireland, for example, he and I had some detailed conversations and meetings. He wrote brilliantly about this. You are blacklisted, your work ceases. There's no editor can afford to keep you there because the system is going to be attacked by the hardline feminists. I organised a conference in 2017 in central London on parental alienation. Uh, we had eminent speakers from NSPCC, senior judges, and such type. We were a outside. Those two groups organised by feminist barrister that we were advocating the kidnapping of children and the murdering of children if the murdering of the mothers if the mothers disagreed. This came from an MP, Glenda Jackson. So you see, faced with that onslaught, what ordinary conservative, frightened business person, editor, or whatever else, worried about their job is going to attack this? Look at what happened, Professor Tim Hunt, Nobel, who had won the Nobel Prize in England, when he made a bit of an off-the-cuff joke about how working with female colleagues, the problem is you fall in love with them or they cry if you criticize them. Yeah, it is verboten to touch this subject, and it's become that way. But the self-censorship is worse. They're just self-censorship, and that fear is horrendous.
Well, someone asked me what they can do to Tucker Carlson now. What and I had trouble answering it. I have some ideas. I mean, he has his own independent media company now. He's got his own research team.
Mm.
It's evident. What leverage do they have over him now that he could be intimidated in this way?
His
Tom, do you
sense
have
of
any thoughts?
chauvinism.
Well, I read last week that Tucker Carlson is under the wing of another branch of Fox, and it's like that does bring to mind questions about why he would do that. Um,
Huh.
so who knows? But I think that in general we have a Mobius strip media. You know, it only looks at one side when it comes to men's issues. Only one side. That's it. You know, they cannot and will not do anything. Even academia is
Hmm.
one-sided. I mean, there is some research on men that doesn't come out. And I've got a whole section of my Substack on the research that's been done on masculinity that no one sees. And there's been
Yeah.
some done, but very little is done actually. You know, we've got one side that looks at things, and that's it. Now, to me, this has got to be a concerted effort because, you know, in the past, when I was growing up a little guy, I mean, you had the one paper would say one thing, one paper would say another thing, and they'd fight about it. You know, that was a good thing. Then you'd
Yeah.
fight about it.
Oh,
There's no fighting anymore about men. You just don't talk about
no.
it.
Is I wonder if men's issues kind of created the model for that. Did the men
Hmm.
did these issues give them the blueprint? Did it give them teach them the technique of doing this, which they've then applied to other areas of
Hmm.
politics and public life?
Hmm.
I
Interesting
would
idea.
Vincent,
slightly
Vincent, do you have a
disagree.
thought? Hmm?
Sorry, no, don't speak over Tom. Tom was speaking.
No, you
Well,
go ahead,
Vincent,
man. Go ahead.
go ahead, Vincent.
notice this as an Irishman. I mean, I'm 67 years of age. We had this from the British media all during the troubles in Northern Ireland, from the late 60s onwards. Not the originator of this, but the same model be continued. One story only. Men are a problem, how to address that problem, how to protect women. There's a massive industry behind it. The ideology will not be taken away, but the funding is what has to stop because the funding that's given to the NGOs, to the unregulated, unaccountable domestic violence industry, which is totally
Yeah.
biased.
Hmm.
In fact, in constitution and practice, it only serve one survivor, five female. So
Yep.
that the model, it seems the society always wants to have somebody to hate, and it's become men now for the last 20 years. We are the convenient target. No
Yes.
matter what background we are, we're all bad.
What I think that was not think I know was left out of this is that we have the economic issue, we have the divorce regime, we have the ongoing misandry throughout our culture that we mentioned here that is in the media, and it is very strong in the media. And something that they did not get into that I didn't like is that they did not describe the nature of the sexual market. We can tell young men to marry all we want and say how great fatherhood is, which it is. I'm a father myself. However, just telling men to get married will not work for men who have no means to get married. There are actually men right now who have no pathway to marriage, let alone find a date. So some men are forced into celibacy. Some men go their own way. We all know about MGTOW, and they did not address this at all. They did not go into the sexual chaos of the sexual market. You know, also the difficulty in even meeting women these days, and also the unrestrained hypergamy of many women these days was not mentioned.
Yes.
And like we said in our discussion, several discussions, but our discussion with Roger Devlin, in which he went into it, is if there's going to be an unregulated sexual market with no familial involvement, it's simply going to be a free for all, which has been going on for quite some time. then you're going to get a sort of what Devlin calls, and it's a good term. You're going to get Darwinian mating, meaning that many of the women are going to be going after only so-called high status men or even antisocial men, which leaves ordinary men out of the picture. But not just that. There is mention of these vices, and I see this amongst many of these men in the so-called gentlemanosphere, other male commentators saying that men are simply lazy, that they are turning to porn and other vices. Now, vices by definition are not good. I don't recommend that we have men indulging in vices excessively. However, if you take away their earning power and you take away their social scaffolding and you take away their fathers and you have amongst the homes with fathers, some of them are even matriarchal homes. So when you take all of this away, what would men turn to? Why would men turn to these vices if they had other alternatives? I don't think that men, even though even some taken or married men indulge in vices, I think that most men, young men especially, would rather have a woman than turn to triple X
Andrew Tate.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's no mention of this. Just get married. And the other guy, the Terry Schilling guy, as I was saying, with my discussion with Stephen and Rick, he could show off his family of 8 children, or I think that he's going on his 9th child. For those of that know the correct number, maybe you could correct me in the comments when I post this. to have this, it's good that he has a large family. We want to see large families. However, to tell men who cannot even support one child, or even, let's say, even meet a woman, what kind of message is that? It's good for you, pal. You got the 8 children. I can't. If I were a young man, I might not even be able to get a job these days. Also, because of a feminist legislation that has turned our economy upside down, and Title IX. None of this is mentioned. None of this is mentioned. Men's economic position is not mentioned. And also, they just turn to the big bankers. BlackRock is monopolizing real estate. Well, maybe they are to a degree, but they're not telling the whole other story in terms of men's economic position these days.
Yeah. The thing that
I,
got me too was there was no mention of the denigration of men that's gone on for 50 years. The calling men toxic,
Yes,
calling men oppressors, calling men all kinds of names. And then why would they not want to get married? Well,
right.
because it's just crazy. It's crazy. They left that part out along with the divorce courts and all the other things that you guys know much better than I do. All of the crap that's gone on. It's just amazing what they left out, you know?
yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, Bradley, because this clearly is increasingly preoccupying younger men. This is what they're up against. I
Mm.
think. I think
Yeah, yeah,
Tom, people my age, and Tom and Vincent. I think we've been concerned, a lot of us, about the divorce courts, the injustices, the lack of constitutional rights, the abuses of government
right,
power.
right.
And we complain that this isn't, but now this is reaching general knowledge. People know about this, despite, not because of journalists like Tucker Carlson, but despite them. And yet, even as this reaches general knowledge, now there's another whole set of problems, much more indirect and much more nebulous to get a grip on, which are the ones that you outlined, and that we talk, people like Roger Devlin and others have talked about: this
Mm.
hypergamy, this the dating market and free fall, the relations between the sexes in complete free fall. So Tucker Carlson is not just a little behind the times. I think he's just, he's increasingly being left left in the dirt as far as any connection with reality nowadays.
Yeah, but this is a guy who's interviewed Warren Farrell and other men's people, and it's like he knows what's going on.
Yeah,
I'm sure he knows what's going on, but he's just not saying it,
yeah.
you
I'm
know?
sure he knows what's going on too. He
Yep,
Yes,
certainly does.
yep,
yes, he knows. And then also he mentioned they mentioned Dan Bilzerian and Andrew Tate, and that these men are not models to. They're not models to model, so to speak, which I agree with. And as I said
right.
in my previous conversation, that in a serious, healthy society, these two men might be just somewhere else, so to speak. They wouldn't be able to do what they do in a healthy society. However, in this sort of unregulated sexual environment, well, men like Dan Bilzerian and Andrew Tate do well. I mean, they do well with women, so they're wondering why young men are going to model Andrew Tate and Dan Bilzerian. I mean, let alone what we're talking about here, the divorce regime and the injustice against men. Young men are not even going to be thinking about that. I mean, we could talk to them about the divorce courts, and they will take that into account probably if they want to, let's say, be careful of their future. But I think that we all know that a big concern of young men is to get women. That's what a big concern is. So
Yes.
why would they not model men who are doing well with women?
And why wouldn't they go to someone who values them instead of being called toxic and an
Yes,
oppressor? These guys, they say, get off your ass. You can do
yes,
something. You're worth it. But you got to get off your ass first. I mean, that's the
yes,
kind of message they're getting. And frankly, that's a whole lot better than you're an oppressor. You're
yes.
toxic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Duh.
yeah. I mean, when I say that these guys are not these are not guys that I want my son to, look after, and my son is not going to probably. But what I'm saying is that at least those guys are, uh, let's
Yes,
say, providing the red pill, so to speak, of what does attract women. Maybe they're not good guys, but a young
I
man's going to
agree.
say, "I'm going to go with what works here. What else do I
I'm
have to do here?"
I'm with you.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
today's manosphere is yesterday's deadbeat dads. It's the same thing. It's just kind of a different container to hold it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Ugh.
And as we were discussing with Paul Elam, and Stephen in our
Mm.
conversation with Paul, is that, you know, deadbeat dads, well, dads are going to be deadbeats if you, let's say, put the child support so high that they cannot afford it. Well,
Right,
you're
right,
going to be a broke
right.
dad.
Yes. Dead broke dads.
Yeah, yeah, or an incarcerated dad.
I,
So
I wanted to ask Stephen, do we know the percentage of men who actually do abandon their families?
Um, no, we don't, because the
Yeah.
court, first of all, no one keeps those statistics because they don't care really. And the courts don't adjudicate. The courts don't adjudicate any cases on that basis. In
Right,
other words, a
right,
man who simply abandons his children and runs away and doesn't pay child support, he's not treated any worse than the man who's the victim of a unilateral divorce against who's done nothing wrong,
right.
who's been faithful to his marriage, who stays with the kids. It's all adjudicated the same way. So
Yes.
nobody says to the dad who abandons his children and runs off with the stereotype, the Porsche, the trophy wife and the red Porsche and all that nonsense. Nobody, because they really don't care.
Oh,
It's not adjudicated any differently. They're not treated any worse
right.
than the good dad whose children are stolen.
I'm
Um,
I'm guessing it's really low though.
it's very low. And the point is, it's not the cause of the problem. You can point to
Exactly.
examples of anything, but it's not the reason for the fatherhood crisis that Carlson is claiming to uh, elucidate. And he's not elucidating it because it's not. And he
Right.
does, by the way, invoke that old canard. In the end, the only place where he actually himself is interviewed in that original film was when he talks about men abandoning their children. And
They
he's
deserve
got that.
contempt.
Yes, they deserve contempt. It's just complete nonsense. Yeah. Tom, you mentioned also he were I wasn't aware that he had interviewed Warren Farrell.
Oh
Um,
yeah, a couple times I think.
Interesting. Of course, Warren Farrell doesn't criticize the divorce courts, but
That's correct.
so I suppose that's a little safer. The other one he did about
Huh.
interview for about 10 minutes was Jeff, and his surname is slipping out of my head. The man whose son James was ordered to be castrated,
Oh,
chemically
Younger is his
castrated.
name?
Younger, Jeff
yep,
Younger.
I
yep.
just met
Yeah,
him the other day.
Hmm.
yeah. He's a
Yeah.
great man. He's done
Oh,
some absolutely fabulous videos. He does some first-rate
oh,
research. I mean, aside from the horrendousness of his case and
and
his son's
he has
situation,
really done
he
some
does.
great work.
Yeah, he's done some. So he's
Yeah.
really devoted himself to this and done some great research and great videos. But I noticed Tucker Carlson did interview him, to
Hmm.
his credit, but it was an interview of about 10 minutes. Now, why wasn't it an interview of an hour and a half? Why didn't he investigate this? He knew there, he clearly did know what was going on.
Obviously.
Why? I mean, you'd think if a judge ordering a young boy to be chemically castrated because his feminist mother, wants him to be a girl, and Carlson knows about this and exposed it on TV, but why couldn't he, why wouldn't an hour? how typical is this? What other cases are there like this? There's so many other questions that could have been asked
Yes.
of this case. And why was the judge allowed to do this? What gave the judge this authority to, and why did the judge get away? Why isn't there an outcry over this case? And 10 minutes is all it merits. I
Well,
thought it was very strange. Yes, Vincent.
if we can touch on this for a moment, Martin Dobney, who is a well-known journalist, TV commentator, presenter in the UK for the last few years, he was heavily involved in this whole situation that you just described, and he wrote some brilliant articles on it in the Telegraph and the like. And he helped me with my book, then he backed off, then he came back and helped me again. And when he came a presenter with GB News, the hope was that I would be brought in every now and again as a so-called expert on the failings in this and give a few minutes of elucidation, shall we say, on the situation.
Hmm.
I was brought in on three separate occasions. Each time I was given a script I had to stick to, which was a very, very minor version of what I wanted to be talking about. Three other times I was meant to be brought in and I was knocked out by a combination of Peter Mandelson, Elon Musk, and Charlie Kirk because they were the news and I got dropped down. Okay, that's
Hmm.
no surprise. They're a big deal. But there's no slot reserved for me. All right. I wasn't brought in again on this very important subject, whether it was young men increasingly opting out of education, employment, and romance, shall we say, things like this, and a huge amount of young men going into prisons. So I guess that the editors of these programs do not want this subject discussed in length. They will do the blurb about how they're going to discuss it, but it's touch light. It's only a pretend discussion
Hmm.
to fulfill some sort of, oh, we've done our bit. It's a mockery and it's covering up the systemic malpractice because they know it's not going to be exposed because nobody of virtue, of real knowledge, of ability is allowed to express what is happening.
All right. Now,
And
GB
that's
News,
what,
GB
yeah,
News
GB
just
News.
is a conservative. Is it online
Yeah.
only?
Oh no,
Conservative.
no, no! It's proper TV channel. It's the largest in the UK now. To bypass Sky and BBC.
It is
Hmm.
okay,
ITV.
and they fancy themselves a kind of alternative media, or
That's
are
right.
they
Oh
just?
yeah, yeah. And for a while they were bringing me in and another guy as well. He was on about the CMS, the Child Maintenance Service. I don't touch the financials. And yeah, we got, shall we say, accidentally dropped. I looked at my old interviews. I said nothing wrong. I spoke very well. I was told I spoke very well. Because you know how it's very good. You try your best, but you cannot guarantee you're going to be top notch. But I was top notch on each occasion. I used to take part in motor race, and I know about the necessity to perform. And yeah, it's a policy that even the so-called right-wing, hard-hitting commentariat will only do a touch light investigation and even if I'd imagine some of the people you talked about, and I've listened to Warren Ford and had a chat with him a few years ago in London, he's gone in on a tight script. He's not going in on what he really wants to talk about.
Right.
It's their script, not his script.
Right.
That's what I certainly found.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I'm a
That's
small
true.
fry.
I think that's
absolutely.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a similar experience with. I at one time I flatter myself that I've done more. I've managed to get into more mainstream publications and mainstream media than anyone else who talks about these issues for all the good it's done, which is almost zero. But I did appear twice on O'Reilly's show. And
Hmm.
the one time he was very well, he's known for being belligerent and putting
Right.
guests through a tough time. So he did. I was told he liked me, but I don't know. I don't know how anyone got that opinion. That the way he treated me. Um, and the second time was when Jesse Jackson was found to have. Is it Jesse Jackson who was found to have sired a bastard, an illegitimate child? Anyway, whatever. And so they had me on because that was the news hook. But for the most part, they never followed up. There was never any other. There was one show I got on called Hardball, which is a mainstream
Right.
media, big mainstream media show. I got on
Yeah.
it, and I was interviewed by a guy, a liberal named Larry O'Donnell, Lawrence O'Donnell, and it was unbelievable. I mean, many people told me it was the most hostile treatment they'd ever seen a guest received. One of them said they took a commercial break, and one of them said, "Well, Dr. Baskerville says this, and this, but we're not having any of it. He's wrong."
Mhm.
this is supposedly impartial,
You must
disinterested
be
view.
telling the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
he says this about the family courts, but we're not believing. We don't believe a word of it.
Yes, and in all, in all of this, do you think that there's some type of tendency in some or even many men to, for lack of better words, to screw over other men? Because when some men I've spoken to online, they're calling for, let's say, part of the all the men's space, whether we could say it's, let's say, the red pill space, whatever term that we want to use for the manosphere, men's rights, MGTOW, etc. Some people have said that men need to be liberated. Well, I guess in some sense that men need to be liberated from a certain sort of men. I mean, if it weren't for these powerful men running the show, men wouldn't be in this position, right?
Right, right.
What do you guys think? Yeah.
Well, I think men live in a hierarchy. And we
But
know that
Yeah.
about masculine psychology. I mean, we're always striving to get a little bit better, a little bit better. I want to win. I want to be on the winning team, et
right,
cetera, et cetera. And so that sets us up for this kind of thing.
right.
And also this following off what Thomas so eloquently said there is, it's like the naughty boy caught in school. You're in school, a bunch of boys. You've been stupid. They pick the one beside you, or you're relieved. You're not spotted. You escaped. And there's a lot of that among men,
Hmm.
particularly among men who've been helped in the system, who've been helped by the likes of charity and so on. For a while they need the help, or they're totally dependent, blah, blah, I need. And the moment they get a half result from the family court, they won't come back and help any other men. That applies to
Uh,
99%. And I used to be dealing with
Mm.
over 900 a year for about 11
uh,
years.
uh.
Yes, yes,
And
because
so
Yeah,
the refusal of men to help other men is the biggest single factor causing so much of this, because they should be providing the opposition, the political opposition. There's no counterbalance.
yes,
I've had public figures come to me privately and ask my advice on how to deal with the court, and they won't go public. They won't say anything. I
Yeah.
said to them,
Right, right.
first of all, I don't offer, I can't offer any advice about the court. The best thing you could do is speak out about this publicly and make the judge afraid of you. Make that, show that you're a public figure. Use the leverage you have as a public figure. Speak out about the injustices and make the judge intimidate the judge. Turn the tables on the judge. They won't do it. None of them. None of them
right,
Exactly.
do it.
right. And
Twice, if I can just interject, twice I have
Please.
wasted maybe 30 hours with two separate documentary crews on exactly this lengthy documentary. One's meant to be for Channel 4, another one is meant to be for the BBC. There's going to be two different people. I was one side, there's a person on the other side, an opposition, shall we say, and we're going to present our cases over time. It's going to be edited. And I spent Michael Cannon organized one of them. It came to him first. It's gone on over a month, this one. Twice I was involved for maybe 20, 30 hours and it all got panned. Someone has enthusiasm. They're asking you the questions you want to answer. You have to be factual, obviously. And then it goes nowhere because bottom line is, it's like why they wouldn't fight Marvin Hagler. If you know your stuff, they'll want you. They want someone who's emotional, who'll go the typical stereotype, who'll get angry, who'll be crying, who'll be hurtful, who needs help. They don't want a man who's worked on himself, has managed to survive the deepest shit could be going, I think, and is functional and has a bit of ability. That type of man is not wanted. Is he a threat to their comfortable narrative? That's
Hmm.
my bottom line on the issue there.
Hmm.
Yeah, Bradley, to answer your question, I think that there is a thread in the manosphere that says precisely that. There's a very strong impulse among men to betray other men. And I have a couple of guests I think we should interview, potential guests, who say this precise thing, that there is a strong impulse. Some people cite the French Catholic anthropologist, I guess you'd call him, René Girard, who wrote an excellent book
yeah,
called The Scapegoat, and very highly regarded book. I highly recommend it. Who writes about the scapegoat, how this need and he points out that actually the majority of human sacrifices over the ages have been men, not young virgins. It's been men
Huh.
who've been the victims of human sacrifice,
Huh.
and of course, Jesus himself
Right,
was
right.
the foremost example.
Exactly.
right. You see, I'm not sure. I mean, maybe I would look into this. Maybe we could discuss this one day. Is that when did it become okay? Men have always been competitive with each other, but when did it become this theme of being competitive in terms of, let's say, getting on the right side of women or getting women? It seems like the competition these days is who's not going to offend the woman, who gets the most women, and who's going to curry the favor of women. I mean, I would think that I'm perhaps my knowledge is limited, but was this always something? I mean, I thought that men competed each other in other ways. Their physical prowess, intellectual prowess, uh, other skills. I mean, this is just, it seems kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, I
I
agree.
want
Go ahead.
Tom. No. I've written a chapter about this in my book, and it is this: modern men believe that by protecting the women, particularly the middle class men, particularly the academics and the liberals, that by standing up for the defense of women, they're actually being a hero, when in fact they're just being a modern chauvinist that's been outmaneuvered by smarter women. And the
Mm.
women don't have to be very smart to get these tame men to do what they want. So there's a lot of kudos for a man to be seen to stand up for women. Oh, I defend women's rights. Women have been historically oppressed. Men had all the benefits. Oh, yeah, they had great benefits, all right. So there's a lot of value for this. So the men who argue for real equality, oh, you're just misogynist. You want a restoration of the patriarchy.
Mm.
Jesus Christ was a man. We meant to follow men. You see, this straight away gets turned to what? So there's a lot of that going on. The modern day, I would call a lot of modern day feminist men outdated chauvinists, but they've been
Hmm.
used, manipulated.
Yeah, yes,
Yeah.
and also we could see this even in
Yeah.
everyday talk that I've had, even with some men in passing. Sometimes I've participated in some internet forums and I've raised some discussion of men's issues online, whether it be Twitter, as I said, other forums. That the quickness or the flippancy to go against men, mean that even if you mention divorce and you mention the causes of divorce and who initiates divorce, so flippantly will men just say, well, what if the guy's an a-hole? What if the guy's a jerk? I mean, they're going straight to this without looking at the dynamics of it. You can say 90% of divorces involving children are initiated by women. Well, men are a-holes. Like men will flippantly say men are a-holes.
Yes.
I,
And why do they do that?
I,
Because that's what impresses women. I mean, this is
Yeah.
a hierarchical thing again. They want to impress women. They say, "Oh, those terrible men," meaning I'm okay, but not those
but
guys.
but
Seriously,
Well,
right.
that's what they do.
Go ahead.
So it's all
this is true.
hierarchical.
The chivalry does camouflage a certain amount of cowardice. That's very true. But I think it's also a debased understanding of masculinity, because these
Right,
conservatives are
right.
always going on about manhood and masculinity, and but I think it actually, what we're describing here is a kind of feminization, a kind of effeminacy
Yes.
among men. They are not
Right.
they're not being manly. They're not being
Exactly.
admirable. They're buckling under to the women, and they are themselves, allowing themselves to be intimidated. I mean, look at the models of manhood in our just in our fairly recent past. I mean, I can show you some. I can cite you some film clips where Humphrey Bogart never took took anything from women. He didn't hesitate to tell them when they were talking nonsense. And you could say the same about a lot of other men, and that, I think women respect that.
And women valued that, just like women
Yes.
today are
Yeah,
valuing the devaluation of men. And so that men are going to do
yeah,
what women value. They're going to try and impress women as much as they can. That's what the whole goal is of the hierarchy, is to show that you're the best. And
Yeah.
so if
mm,
if if the best is saying the other men suck, then that's what you're going to do. So we've got a lot of betrayal going on where people are betraying men in order to get the girl, basically.
Yes. And I want to repeat this, is that you guys summed it up perfectly, is that it almost seems, I mean, Stephen, you put it very succinctly, is that the masculinity is being judged by whether a man is attracting women. That's not what masculinity has traditionally been. I don't think so.
yeah,
Part of it
yeah.
has been, I
Very
think.
true.
Oh, yeah. Always has been. King, magician, lover,
You like that book?
masculinity. I like that book.
Oh, me
I,
too.
I did I did some work with a few people on that. Martin Seeger, whom you know that you know, and Jeffrey Breeze and Joe Horton.
Hmm.
And we're coming up with some thinking for UCL for Dr. John Barry, Male Psychology Network, and it was
Hmm.
he put it out on his system, but it has always been. But the problem is this: what men valued decades and centuries ago and the value now with regard to women has not changed much. What's changed massively is the social narrative in the
Yes.
current system in the Western
Yes.
world.
Yeah.
It has distorted things. Basic men have not really changed that much. What has changed also a lot is heavy industry is gone. So an awful lot of work now can be done by either gender. First, even 50 years ago, a lot of women, for example, couldn't drive large buses because there wasn't hydraulic suspension. The gears, the clutch, this power, no power steering. They weren't physically capable. Now that's all gone.
Right.
A weakling can drive any vehicle nowadays. And with the demise of the heavy industry, that's coal, steel, and shipbuilding in the UK, apart from the roadworks and construction, there's virtually nothing else women cannot be involved in, even though they're pretty hopeless at a lot of it. I live beside Wembley Stadium. Sometimes when I go there to the big matches, about a quarter of all the police will be small little 5 foot blonde women. What are they going to do if there's a riot? Yeah, it's a joke, like it's absurd. But there's quotes. Ireland is even worse. A female wannabe firefighter sued the Irish state because she failed the bleep test because the tests were discriminatory. Nature is discriminatory. But she
Yes,
got
exactly.
850,000. She got 850,000 euro because the system discriminating against women because they're weaker than men. Well, I know who I want to carry me if I'm up, if
No
I'm in trouble,
kidding.
and
Amen.
I know that not for the women
Right.
know who they want to carry
Big
them as
guy.
well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And by
So
the
what
way,
they
the
have
book
to
that
do,
Vince
what
and
they
I
have
were
to,
talking. Go ahead, Stephen.
Sorry.
no, go ahead, Tom.
I was saying the book that
Go
Vincent and
ahead.
I were both remarking about is
Oh
King,
yeah.
Magician, Warrior, Lover by Robert Moore. And it's the only book out there that I know of that looks at how do men become mature masculine? What's
Yeah.
the path for the mature masculinity? It's a must read for any man who
Hmm.
wants to understand that kind of thing. It's just beautiful stuff.
Once again, what's the name? Tell us the name
It's
again.
called King,
Title.
Magician, Warrior, Lover, is the first volume. There's 5 volumes. The first one is just a small 100 and 200 page book that goes kind of a summary of everything. But the last 4 volumes is a volume on each magician, warrior, king, lover, and each of those is yay thick. He did quite a bit
Hmm.
of work. It's just fantastic stuff. And most psychologists have no idea about this. When I was in Division 51, which was the APA's Division for Men and Masculinity, I asked the list. I said, well, do you guys know about Robert Moore and the work of Robert Moore? No, not one of them knew anything about it. This is the only book on how do men mature. How do you go from being a boy into a man? It's just incredible stuff. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox.
Well, that means
You're
that
actually spot on.
well, that's something that's also ignored in the documentary as well.
Right,
If we're not going to
right.
develop these men that we need,
Yes,
what basis could this documentary even have in the first place?
right.
I mean, we don't have designated male spaces. Unions, as far as my knowledge, I mean, I'm not a tradesman, but I do not believe that they have the same strength that they once did. We don't have guilds.
They're run
Uh,
by women.
yeah,
Unions are headed by women.
yes.
Yes,
Sorry.
exactly.
Yeah, no, but
Exactly.
yes, and it's also the way that we're living in this sort of atomized, individualistic sort of society. Men never existed all by their lonesomes, I don't think. Traditionally speaking, people did not. We're living in a very yeah, it's a kind of very isolated, lonely existence. So we're not
Yes.
going to get this. And there are, again, I'm going to stress it, and I guess pun intended, considering my YouTube channel is called a male space. Uh, we don't have the designated male spaces for men to cultivate ideas, to give each other the sort of training, the solace or support that they do need.
And bless
That is a
this kind
major
of
part.
space where people can speak about what is true with men. So thank you, sir.
Thank you. You're welcome. Yes.
Yeah.
But what you've addressed there is the fact that we now live primarily in an urban environment. I come from the remote Irish countryside, and
Mm.
you had to depend on your neighbour for help because they would depend on you for help when an animal was very sick and had to be dragged out of a hole or whatever. There was emergencies. You had to help each other. And only male strength and organisation could do the business. That's just nature. Nobody wrong with anything. A lot of women working very hard there, still are. But in a in an urban society, which is 98% of the UK, you can be whoever you want in your computer, behind your computer screen,
Yes.
in your house, living like a confined rabbit, really, you know? because there's so few people taking part in sports. All you do is look at the Premiership team, the leading first division football clubs in the country. Two-thirds of the players are from abroad.
Uh,
Three-quarters of the players are from abroad. Not from England anymore. There's no kids out boys out playing football. We're talking about not a fraction of
uh,
what they used to be. So in
uh,
an urban society, you can absolutely have your own space and live your own fantasies and be whatever you want because you're removing yourself from nature to a large extent.
mm, mm.
Yes. So it's been a go ahead, Steve.
No, go ahead, Bradley. I think it's been a great. I think it's been a great show. I've really
Yeah,
enjoyed
yeah, it's
listening to
been
both of you
enjoyable.
gents.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm sure we could go on about this. I don't know if Tucker Carlson is going to put out some more things for us to talk about or not. I don't know, but in a way, I hope that I mean, if there's a silver lining to this, it's that this might galvanize men to coalesce around this issue because there's certainly no. Maybe that's what he intends. Maybe he's trying to provoke us. He says fatherhood is important. He says fatherhood is, and there's a lot of trad cons that say this, that it's the great. Candace Owen, a few other people said it's the greatest crisis of our time. They said this in the middle of COVID, in the middle of
Right,
the
right.
Ukraine war, in the middle of the
Yeah.
threat of economic collapse. They still say that fatherlessness is the greatest crisis of our time. So maybe Carlson is doing the best he can within the confines that he's got, and he's trying to provoke us into getting off our duffs and adding, calling him out
Yep.
in a constructive way, so that men,
Unprovoked.
yeah, so that men know the whole truth, not just the truth,
Yep.
but the
Yep.
whole truth.
Amen.
Yes. And that's why I want to
Amen twice.
yes, and that's what I just want to tell the audience also. I mean, we know these scholars and authors and other authorities is that one of the reasons why I have this channel is because I do want to get this information out there and the works of all you guys and also Belfort Bax, Roger Devlin, Janice Fiamengo, and I want to further their knowledge and get it out there. So that's why we're here. Yes. So
Hmm.
maybe there's some good from him provoking us because we're compelled to make these videos after his documentaries and podcasts. So it's been a great conversation. I'm glad I met Vincent and Tom from this conversation. And to any of the people out there who want to get top-notch commentary on men's issues and sexual politics, subscribe to the channel. And I will be linking both Vincent's and Tom's contact information below. So thank you for being with me today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. A privilege.
Thank you, gents.
Indeed.
You're welcome.